The Bergson began to slip away, wondering if this was death. It was warmer than they expected.
First, you die. No dramatic music, no slow-mo death cam, you're just dead. And without even thinking, you're already slamming restart. You're not mad, you're not even surprised, you're just like, alright, that's on me, let's run it back. And that's the core of it, that's the whole genre. There's little to no hand-holding, there's no safety net, just you, the game, and whatever random garbage it decides to hand you this time. So you all know I play a lot of ARPGs, like Last Epoch, Diablo, etc, etc. And they all scratch a very similar part of my brain as roguelites. But there's something purer and sharper and kind of mean about roguelites and roguelikes. They're not about optimizing your build, they're not about grinding for loot, they're about solving a problem immediately, right now, with whatever random junk the game throws at you. They don't usually come from AAA studios. They come from a bunch of college kids and open source nerds who thought dying 1,000 times in a dungeon would be a good time. So let's rewind a little bit. Unsurprisingly, the first roguelike was called Rogue. It was released in 1980 on University Unix systems. What about the graphics? Well, they didn't really exist. The UI, it looked like someone hacked a spreadsheet with a sledgehammer. But it introduced a formula that's still being used 40 years later. Procedural generation, permadeath, every run is different, every mistake is permanent. The developers of Rogue basically asked, what if Dungeons & Dragons could run without a dungeon master? So they built one. And it killed you, over and over. Rogue inspired a wave of spiritual sequels, Morta, Angband, Hack, NetHack, and these were nerdcore dungeon crawlers with a cult following. They were complex, they were brutal, and they were also proud of it. You could die by misidentifying a potion, you could walk into a trap while hallucinating, you could die because you ate something that was cursed, or because your pet wouldn't move off the stairs. These games didn't really care if you won, they care if you learned. They also defined what we now call the traditional roguelike. In 2008, a bunch of devs even made a checklist for it. They called it the Berlin interpretation. By their definition, a game had to be punishing, slow, complex, and turn-based to count as a roguelike. And sure, that's technically accurate, but that's not what most of us are playing anymore. We're not in ASC2 dungeons, we're in Isaac, we're in Hades, Rogue Legacy, Slay the Spire, Cult of the Lamb, Undermine, Children of Morta, real-time action with roguelike elements. Games can be polished, they can be gorgeous, or they can be simple pixel art, but most of the time they are wildly chaotic. At the core, they're still roguelike, just with the knobs turned all the way up. But it's important to remember those classic games, even if we're not going to live in them. Today we're going to talk about the games you actually play, the ones you have in your Steam library at the moment, the ones you die in on purpose, the ones you choose to load knowing that you will lose over and over and over again. So here's where the genre breaks wide open. At some point in the late 2000s, someone looked at NetHack and said, what if we didn't make this look like a spreadsheet? What if we didn't make this look like an Excel worksheet? What if the game was fast? What if it was real time? What if it was fun to move in? What if you could die, restart, and be back in the action in under 5 seconds? And that's where roguelites come in. At this point, we start seeing games ditch out the old rules. They're still random, they're still punishing, and they're still permadeath. But now we're getting combat that actually feels good, visuals that don't look like a terminal crash, and most importantly, progression. Rogue Legacy was a big one for this, and Rogue Legacy 2 took it even further. You die, sure, but you come back stronger. You invest gold into your castle, you pick a new heir, all with random traits. Some have IBS, some have vertigo, or some have a weird weapon build. You're not just surviving a run, you're building momentum across all of them. And then you have Binding of Isaac. If Rogue is a spreadsheet, Isaac is a trash fire full of synergy, chaos, and poop jokes. It's a twin-stick shooter with hundreds of items that combine in ways you didn't even know were possible until they break your entire run or blow you up. You die a lot in Isaac, but it's hard not to laugh while you're doing it. That's the difference. These games want to surprise you, even when it kills you. Same deal with UnderMine. It's got that dungeon crawling loop, but every run you bring something back. You bring back gold, gear, upgrades, you're unlocking permanent systems while still trying to survive whatever nonsense the game throws at you this time. It's still a roguelike, but the edges are softer now. You're not being punished, you're being tempted. Just do one more run, you might finally unlock that relic. You might unlock that vendor. You might unlock that weapon. Children of Morta takes the formula and adds a whole family to it. You're building a legacy. Each family member plays differently. You unlock story as you go, you get attached to these people, and then the game reminds you that attachment is dangerous, especially when everything wants you dead. And then you have games like Cult of the Lamb, which just mash everything together. Roguelike, dungeon crawling, base building, resource simulator, follower management, and light horror. It checks all those boxes in a weird way. You dive in, you grab loot, you come back, you upgrade your cult, maybe you sacrifice a follower, you know, the usual. And then you have things that get even looser. For example, Brotato strips away everything but the dopamine. You pick a character, drop into an arena, and you scale damage like crazy. Wave after wave after wave. It's pure chaos. A roguelite power fantasy with no story, no levels, no filler, just numbers getting bigger and your screen getting messier. All of these games have different takes. They have different mechanics, they have different levels of complexity. But they're all built on the same idea. Permadeath is fine, as long as you get something out of it. Meta progression made the genre more playable, more forgiving, and way more addictive. This is also the point where roguelikes became great content, because now every run is a new story. They're fast, they're surprising, and they're messy. And it's perfect for streamers, it's perfect for YouTubers, and weirdos like me who want to turn failure into something fun. So the genre is no longer about mastery, you're performing the game. So by now, roguelike isn't just a genre. It's basically a virus. It spreads, it mutates, it shows up in places it has no business being in, and somehow it makes many genres better. This is where things get weird, this is where things get fun. Look at Slay the Spire. It's a basic card game, but it plays like a roguelike dungeon crawl. You build your deck one card at a time, you fight, you adapt, you pray for a decent relic, and you hope your build doesn't implode 3 floors in. Every run is a puzzle. Sometimes you feel like you got the puzzle perfectly aligned, and then something happens that throws you off and you can lose it all in 1 second. Did you take the wrong synergies? Should you have taken an early elite fight instead of going for the easy route? It's planning and it's damage control. And then you got games like Hades. Hades grabbed the roguelite loop and wrapped it in character drama, god-tier voice acting, and combat that actually feels so good. It's the first roguelite that made failing the run feel like progress. Every time you die, you unlock more of the story. You talk to the gods, you build relationships, you have daddy issues, you start to understand why you're escaping in the first place. And that's the big twist. Hades made death a narrative, and it still has better build variety than many ARPGs. Going back to Cult of the Lamb, they lean hard into the mashup. They're half roguelite, half dungeon crawler, half cut management sim. You run a dungeon, you come back with loot, you feed your followers, you sacrifice your followers, you marry your followers, you build an outhouse, you sacrifice them. The dungeon runs are solid, the cult building is fun, but it's that loop. It's a constant bounce between runs and base and runs and base that keeps you hooked. And then with Brotato is essentially almost an anti-roguelite. Roguelikes used to be slow, they used to be thoughtful, they used to be punishing. Brotato is essentially the opposite. There's no story, there's no rooms. Well, there's one room, and it's just waves of chaos. You stack weapons, you spin in a circle, and watch numbers explode. Power fantasy in less than 15 minutes. You hit go, you scale like a maniac, and eventually you get swallowed by your own build. And then you just do it again and again and again. What's wild is how different all these games look and play and feel, but underneath, they're all the same bones. Random progression, permadeath, and player choice every couple of minutes. And I think that's one of the most important things. Player choice. Player choice can make or break your run. And that's just the core. You don't know what's coming next. You don't have time to get bored. One could even say roguelikes aren't really a genre anymore. They're more of a design layer. They're more of a mechanic. You can slap them into almost anything, and I think these games prove that point. We have turn-based card battlers, bullet hells, 2D slashers, narrative games, and even other games are starting to flirt with the idea of procedural dungeon loops. You go in, you experiment, you explode, you learn stuff, and you start over. It doesn't matter if it's cards, if it's combos, or guns, whatever. Let's be honest. On paper, this genre shouldn't work. Honestly, when I first started playing Isaac and Spelunky over a decade ago, I didn't get it. I played them, I died, I thought it was incredibly hard, and I shelved them. It was only until years later when I started to actually appreciate what roguelikes were trying to do. You lose everything when you die, you're failing constantly, you have zero control over what the game throws at you usually, but they're addictive somehow. There's a reason why the genre is still around after 40 years. They're all essentially teaching machines, even the old ones. They don't explain anything, you just have to learn by dying. You have to learn what items are good, what items are bad, or what monsters are easy to kill, what monsters are difficult, how they work. All those things, they're never explained to you, you just learn by dying. If the lesson is fairly simple in roguelikes. If you want to win, you have to learn the system. You don't have to memorize it, you don't have to do anything, you just have to understand it. And modern roguelikes kept that idea, they just made it faster, they made it tighter, they made it more chaotic and more adrenaline inducive. They're still about dying, and they're still about learning something after death. You start realizing things like, oh, that item synergy is really good. That boss punishes greed. That build I thought was really good is actually not that great after a certain point. Failure becomes data. It may feel like you're failing aimlessly, but in reality, you're just unlocking knowledge. Sometimes we call that meta progression, other times it's just pure player growth. But the genre gets sneaky, because once you internalize the loop, once you start learning all these methods, it sometimes throws you a curve. Any system that you've found useful may not show up the next time you run the game. You have to learn to make aggressive choices, you have to learn to make defensive choices. You start opting for bigger risks in order to get higher payoffs. You accept that a good run may fail, and you have to be okay with it. You have to try again. Because at the end of the day, when those decisions pay off, you get a dopamine hit that doesn't come from the reward screen or a victory screen. It comes from knowing that you earned it, that you outsmarted the game. Winning in these games feels like clarity. It feels like all the noise in your brain just went quiet and everything lined up perfectly, just long enough for you to pull it off. There's luck, sure, but it's not pure luck. You had to make a million micro decisions. Maybe half of them are bad decisions, but you still had to adapt. You still have to push. You had to commit and somehow make it. So that's the roguelike itch. That's the hook. It's not the loot. It's not the story. It's knowing more than you did last time. And that's why people keep coming back. Not because the genre is friendly, because Lord knows it's not, but because it's an honest genre. You lose when you didn't adapt. If you keep losing, you have to think outside the box. When we find ourselves failing because of life's many random things, we have to adapt and we have to figure out what to do in order to succeed, in order to make it out. Now I want to briefly bring in ARPGs and how they are adapting and learning to roguelikes, into a world where many of the genre players are also enjoying roguelikes. I spend a lot of time playing Last Epoch, as you guys may know. I've cleared the campaign several times, I've hit endgame, and all of a sudden in endgame, you're essentially just doing infinite dungeon crawls with the monoliths and the echoes. They all have random modifiers. You keep pushing deeper and it gets more unstable. If you push too hard, you die. You don't lose your character unless you're playing heroic or something like that, but your progress is gone. You have to start the map over. It's not just inspired by roguelikes at this point. It is a roguelike. It's just dressed like an ARPG. It's all there. Procedural content, run-based reward structure, optional modifiers, branching decisions, even your skill trees, your masteries, they're all permanent systems for you to unlock after finishing runs. You die, you reset, you rebuild. But you walk away with more than you had before. Greater Rifts in Diablo 3 are basically timed roguelikes with scaling loot. They add affixes, they include chaos, you get more loot. Systems don't just exist to punish you, they exist to tempt you. You have one more run, you get another chance at getting the gear, and you tell yourself, I can totally handle 45% poison puddles and exploding elites, right? What all these games figured out is that the roguelike loop solves the ARPG endgame problem. You know, the burnout that you feel when you hit level 100 and you're just grinding XP? I mean, roguelikes fix that. Instead of chasing some abstract goal, you're solving a self-contained challenge. You're not grinding anymore, you're more like attempting. And attempting will always feel more satisfying than a chore. The cool part is that it's not really a gimmick anymore. It's not, hey look, we added a roguelike dungeon. It's these games are being built with repeatable high-stakes loops in mind from the start. Not just for difficulty, but for replayability, for rhythm, and for actual design clarity. The same way you die in Isaac and come back smarter, you die in an Echo and come back knowing you probably shouldn't have stacked crit avoidance and void resistance on the same build. And once you get that, you're hooked. Because you're not grinding for gear anymore necessarily, you're playing to solve the system, you're playing to be smarter than the game. You're chasing some sort of mastery of the game and not just the loot. The loot helps, it makes you push further, it allows you to survive more, yes, and those are all part of the micro decisions that you make. But at the end of the day, it's about solving a puzzle. And this is where they overlap. This is where roguelikes and ARPGs learn from each other. Not because they just share surface mechanics necessarily, but because they also share a core design belief. If the run is interesting, the rewards don't have to carry it. If the system is engaging, players will die for fun. And if you're anything like me, which I'm sure you are if you're watching this video, you'll probably do it again. So what's next? Honestly, roguelikes don't need some massive reinvention. They've already kind of won as a genre. They're everywhere, and like now more than ever, they are kind of popping off in the market. Steam has so many new roguelikes coming every day. Everyone wants to refine their take on the genre, and I love it. You have crazy games like Haste that are essentially Sonic with roguelike elements, and that's why they're so versatile. They can combine themselves with basically any genre. That's also why we're seeing so many survivor-likes, auto shooters with minimal input. You don't aim most of the time, you're just moving, you're surviving, making decisions, building, and playing the game. Because sometimes the real dopamine doesn't come from the skill trees or from your actual skill in a hack and slash. It usually comes from barely surviving and feeling good about the small decisions that you made. So survivor-likes essentially are streamlining the process, but then you have other games that are making it even more complex, like Hades or Hades 2. They are pushing it in the other direction. They're still a roguelike, they still are run-based, full of randomness, but with narrative depth, layered upgrades, and a little bit of an actual reason to care about what happens after you die, not just like Brotato, where you're a potato and you don't really care about your character necessarily. And then you have games like Deep Rock Survivor, where the loop is shorter, but the depth is still there. Deep Rock Survivor is pretty much the best combination of survivor-likes and roguelike ARPGs like Hades, because you're making real decisions in real time. The gameplay is simplified, you only have to move your joystick, but you have a complex build system, complex upgrade system, and different characters and builds. None of it in those games is an accident. It's all perfectly designed by the people behind the game. Games essentially are being built a bit like engines for you to replay whatever it is you're playing over and over, to discover more, to experiment more. And that's what roguelikes are great at. That's why so many devs are building around those ideas, even if they're not really calling it a roguelike. And that's basically it. It's a genre that started with simple spreadsheet-like code and made its way into everything from card games to running games to ARPGs to hack and slashes, and it even stopped being a genre really. It became a mechanic. It became a way to think about games. It's a design method. You just have to implement it in your own little equation, and you have something beautiful, replayable, that can last for many, many years and many replays. So now I would like to hear what are some of your favorite roguelikes. I would like to make a tier list of my favorite roguelikes personally. I haven't played them all. I haven't even played some of the most popular ones. I've been encountering more that I enjoy and play all the time, so please share which ones you may like, and stay tuned for my tier list. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Baby Llama, and I'll see you on the next one.